Welcome to this enlightening session on generative AI. Today, we embark on a journey to explore the transformative power of generative AI in the enterprise landscape. So, I would request sit back, relax, and prepare for a session to gain some insightful conversation ahead. Before I move on, let me introduce our esteemed guests. May I welcome Dr. Pandurang Kamath, please. So Dr. Pandurang Kamath, CTO at Persistent, drives advanced tech research for business innovation. With extensive leadership experience, he enhances user experience, streamlines processes, and fosters new digital products. His goal is to position Persistent as an innovation hub by nurturing a global ecosystem involving academia and startups. Leveraging his expertise from roles at organizations like Ask.com, Bell Labs, HP Labs, he's backed with a PhD in computer science and a commitment to mentorship, academic engagement. Let's welcome Dr. Pandurang Kamath. Next, I would request Sujit Shetty. Please join us. Sujit is co-founder of Team Inertia Technologies, a premier web design software development company, along with digital marketing. He is actively involved in various organizations, Goa Management Associations, BNI, founder, member, and president of Goa Technology Association. He has played a significant role in shaping Goa's IT policies and is a member of the Goa Investment Promotion Board, facilitating investment opportunities in the state. Let's welcome Sujit Shetty. The next, but not the last, Dr. Gaurang. Dr. Gaurang, please join us. He is an esteemed associate professor and head of the computer science department, Don Bosco, with a distinguished academic background, including a PhD from VIT Vellore and postdoctoral research at Lincoln University, Malaysia. He brings a wealth of expertise. He is recognized for his contribution to research, holding a patent, and securing research grants from prestigious organizations like DRDO, Malaysian Palm Oil Board. His commitment to excellence has earned him numerous accolades, making him a valued leader in the field of computer engineering. So I guess I'll first start with Dr. Pandurang. Could you please elaborate on enterprise-grade generative AI and its significance in today's technological landscape?
I mentioned a bit about this in the session we just had earlier. Lot of what we heard on generative AI 2 years ago started with consumer stuff, right? What ChatGPT can do, what questions it can answer, some cool things it can do and so forth. It could write poetry for you on a topic of your choice in Shakespeare's tone and so forth. But when it comes to enterprises and businesses, things shift a bit. So 2 or 3 important things that matter to companies. One is, first of all, what is the data in my business that is relevant and what is the outcomes I'm looking for in the context of my business? How do I get that from this technology? For that, I have to combine that private data and knowledge with the general reasoning or logical, analytical capabilities of this AI and generative capabilities to deliver the outcomes I want. So how do I do that safely and securely? That's number one. Second is that how do I direct that output so that it has a certain degree of quality, consistency, and certain parameters within which it operates, guardrails, if you will. So these 2 things, and then of course doing this at scale and repeatedly and consistently, those things matter. So when we talk about enterprise grade generative AI or AI, these are the parameters that matter a lot.
Thank you. Can you just talk about some of the key use cases? Either you have been coming around, or as a company, or otherwise.
The use cases that we are starting to see, one first and foremost is the way our relationships with the data in a business, right? And the way we interact with it, the way we derive insights from it, fundamentally that is first of all changing. Typically, the way this was done is you built your analytics and BI dashboards, you had certain canned ways of accessing data. There was, you worked with the business analyst, you worked with the data science team, built all this out. What generative AI is giving you the power to do is actually engage in a dialogue and interactively find out what you need. More democratize that access. You don't have to go through pre-canned dashboards. You don't need long cycles to build it anymore. You still need some work, but the way we engage itself is changing. The aperture is changing. So that's number one use case. The other thing in terms of industry verticals, in banking, financial services, we are seeing any place where you are writing long reports which are required as part of your business, or summarizing those, what has happened, whether it is incident analysis, suspicious activity reports, which typically bankers do. Those are places where you will start seeing traction with generative AI. In pharma, we are seeing in the way researchers access unstructured data that is there in research papers, combining that with EHR data or patient healthcare data that is there, which is in structured format, to figure out, for a given clinical trial, for example, what are the right cohort of patients. You're using AI plus generative AI together to accelerate that process of finding the right cohort. They are using it for doing drug research journeys, whether it is in researching the documentation or even getting generative AI to start predicting new molecules. So there are a myriad set of such use cases coming out. And then another thing very important is the way we build software, the way we modernize software, the way we move to cloud. All of these journeys are also being accelerated by AI. It's not only, and it's being done in multimodal form. It's a combination of understanding, synthesizing, and creating text, code, images, video, audio, all kinds of modalities of data is both being understood, interpreted, and also generated within the guardrails we are giving.
Thank you. I think I'll just go to the audience. Nachiket, I'm putting you on the spot. So, Nachiket works with us in the field of data, and I just want you to.
All right. So, one question would be, what kind of tools can I, to start with generative AI, what kind of tools can I use to experiment? So, I work with BI, AI, machine learning, but my exposure is up to things like scikit-learn. I've not gone beyond that into generative AI. So, to get into this generative AI, what kind of tools are available that I can explore? And other thing would be, is this predictable, giving a predictable output? Okay, because for example, neural network is kind of a black box. You train it, control based on the bias, the outputs. But what about generative AI?
So I'm Amok Tarkar. I'm a senior data scientist working with Pandurang. So specifically on the tools as such, right? So generative AI is a very broad field. We need to explore what we need in there. And there are a lot of starting points. There are a lot of cloud tools also to help with, and there are open source tools. So to begin with, first I would say you can explore open source tools, especially two tools, LangChain and Llama Index. This would be the starting points for any engineer to start exploring how to build generative AI. And there are a lot of examples with these two tools as starting points. And the other points would be on cloud, like GCP and AWS, have a lot of these open source GitHub repositories to start learning on all of this. So this would be the start, but I would be even saying one more step further than that is the tech which is out there right now is it's kind of more friendly towards non-developers or just people who want to experiment. The ChatGPT started everything. Now there are more tools like AWS has one called Party Rock. So the name might sound like it's something to do with party, but actually it's a very powerful coding tool. So you just type in English and you build applications, and it's a really great place to start.
Thank you so much.
So one of the things I also wanted to highlight is, half of the innovation team at Persistent sits out of our Goa office, and Amog leads a lot of the interesting work we do in data science there. So in addition to that, right, if you look at just in terms of learning what to focus on and where every single month there are new educational courses and training paths that are coming out. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, IBM have all put out their courses which are freely available. Most recent at the NVIDIA event, they launched a bunch of free courses as well. Andrew Yang, who's also launched multiple AI courses, very well known for deep learning, he's creating a bunch of videos on step-by-step learning with tools. And so when you take these courses, and these are few weeks and they're all free, right? And you can take them on your own time. You get all the tools that Amok talked about. The Hugging Face ecosystem has a lot of models. Many of these cloud providers give individual developers initial sandboxes and credits to get started. So you don't need a big expenditure. So I like to say this line when we talk to students often, right? There are no Eklavyas anymore. You don't need to, there is no one who is disadvantaged, so to speak, with the advent of this, or at least not no one, but it's a significantly lower barrier, particularly in urban areas like here. You can learn from the best out there. The second part about how do you keep, these things accurate is, I think, your question was, how do you control it, right? So first thing is, when you're building applications with these, you are typically not doing it with an open-ended context. You are bringing certain relevant data. Even if you're building consumer applications, you may be bringing the customer history, or if you're building enterprise applications, you're bringing your data. You have to organize that data in certain ways for the application that you need. After you do that, then for each type of inference that your application will do, you have to figure out what is the right context to give that to the larger models. And in more complex system, actually it's not one model. We will typically have compound systems which will have one foundation model, maybe some task specific models and so forth. So the context you give, the grounding techniques you apply to ensure it stays within certain parameters, they become critical. And then we also build a lot of applications that automatically check for the consistency and the quality of this. And it's a little trickier with generative applications, but even with that, there are now tools, standardized tools in the open source ecosystem that are being used to automate the process of quality control, including generating synthetic data, golden data sets to constantly check the output and so forth. Right.
Thank you. Before we move on, any question from the audience?
Yeah. No. See, with all these generative AI coming in, the education is becoming very challenging. I mean, particularly for the teachers, what do we teach? I mean, I can't directly ask them to use the tools. And what do I teach? Because we start with, block by block building, and it's quite time consuming. But that maturity cannot be directly given. I mean, though we would like to have kind of a transformation learning happening to them, it takes time. I mean, it takes 9 months for a baby to get born. So this particular thing is a real challenge for education. I mean, how much change can we bring in? I mean, I can't directly put them on automatic, where they can learn how to generate programs automatically without knowing the fundamentals of programming, right? So how do you see this happening in the education world, the big repercussion on the education world? We hear a lot about the student using, but there is no harm in using. But if they know how best they can use these tools, that would be the right thing to happen. But they are not mature, right? So that's the challenge.
Thank you. Wonderful question, I would say.
And he's my teacher actually, so there's not much I can answer on that. But see, I don't have a good answer for you on how the education system should change. I'll tell you what a very naive or observational answer we have given. We faced this problem back last January when this wave was happening. We have 23,000 people. How do we make them ready for this future, one way or the other, right? So we said that not doing anything is not an option. Secondly, whether you teach them or not, they are learning. The ones who want to learn will learn. The best thing that we could do is find some of these curated courses that are out there. let people embark on the journey. They may struggle, but of course, a first year student comes in and starts directly taking the advanced course on Coursera for Gen AI. They are going to struggle, but these learning paths now are fairly well organized. If you are taking the Gen AI course, they tell you what are the prerequisites you have to learn. Now, if our university doesn't teach it, the student will go and learn. The true learner will learn it from the prerequisites also there online, right? So my suggestion for you is the way we have done is we curated this, we facilitated, we gave access, and we said, look, we can only teach you so much, but we can show you all these paths. And if you take these paths, they are fairly well guided actually. So I would say open up those, and they are free. But the university may have to figure out how do we assess in the context of the degree that we are giving. It's a harder problem, maybe above my pay grade to think about it. Right? So anybody else wants to comment?
Sir, as sir mentioned, it's a difficult task for all the teachers, especially in academic section, because when you give assignments or any dissertation for students, what they do is make use of generative AI, and you get a nice dissertations, right? But the point here is basics. Now, a few years before, we used to struggle, and we used to learn how to write these reports or solve assignments. But anyways, nowadays, since we have generative AI, and we cannot block that in the college or the university system, so students are making use of it. Students have to design the algorithms. I mean, they should at least make an effort to design the algorithms in such a way that it grasps the meaning. If you can do that, if there is no meaning, then the core of the story evaporates. Because when you talk about text, it's a collection of words without a soul. So if there is no meaning, I mean, you are not getting the answer. So you know that ChatGPT is giving you answers, but again, you should know what type of questions you have to ask to ChatGPT. And again, you have to edit it and go further down if you want a specific answers. So if you are ready to do that, as you mentioned, give it to them. If they know how to get the answer, then yeah. But further down the line, for in academic section, it's the biggest challenge for all of us.
It's also a challenge for us to use AI in our businesses as well. I mean, we don't have, as rightly said by Sir Kamath, we don't have students coming up with enough knowledge in terms of using AI for your business logic. So nowadays, whatever we use, we in order to hide from using the AI technology, we'll say that okay, it's some kind of an implementation of a fuzzy logic, where it's not like like how you have a smart chat bot which starts learning on its own over a period of time and builds an algorithm, but here you are left to yourself to feed that logic time and again. So we have not yet reached to that stage where we can use AI a little bit more confidently in our businesses. There are very few in Goa as of now, but I think it's something to look forward to.
And you used a word lacks soul, right? I use a similar phrase often. Yesterday, for example, I had been traveling. I reached yesterday. I had not prepared for the talk that I just gave. So yesterday evening, I sat there and said maybe. I opened ChatGPT, I opened Perplexity, and I opened Claude. Tried to get them to write the outline of the talk for me. And what came out was absolutely, what is the way, without salt, without soul, just some generic bunch of words. They all were grammatically correct. There was nothing meaningful, nothing that all the experience that we have, none of that came out. So eventually, you have to take the long road, and I wrote all the slides and the content myself, couldn't outsource it. But today, if you look at, and Paul Graham, the guy who runs Y Combinator, incubates a lot of startups. He sees AI innovation very closely. He had tweeted this morning about the way AI is generating some of this content today is like Wonder Bread. Wonder Bread is a brand of bread in the US, UK, which is the cheapest sliced bread you can find. Right? It is very cheap. It's very available everywhere. It's white bread, and it has no taste. Neither the bread maker takes pride that this is bread I have created, nor is the buyer buying it because it's the highest quality bread. But it is serving some purpose. Someday when you are short of breakfast, you can put some butter and eat. So we have a long way to go in really improving the quality from there to an artisanal bread that both the baker and the consumer take pride in what is being created.
Thank you. Very wonderfully said. The soul part, actually, this missing soul. It's very very important. So this brings me to my next question. What kind of companies, what kind of organizations, you are seeing in common some kind of a theme who are going towards AI, or especially generative AI, because there are still lots of companies who are completely missing. They're just not adopted it. Yeah, but there are companies who know what they can really get out of it.
Yeah. So, see, over the last 18 months, we have talked to about 200 plus customers, engaged with a lot of them on just this topic on generative AI. We've been in the field learning and listening. What we find is early last year, there was a lot of that skepticism. And I'm talking about, so we have large enterprises as clients, also mid-size enterprises, mostly North American, but also a lot in the Indian ecosystem, Europe as well. And then we have small startups. What I am seeing today is across the board that skepticism or inaction is gone. What we saw in February, March, April, May, even last year. And 2023 was a lot of about experiments. What can this tech do? What can it not do? Can I employ it safely? 2024 is all about taking the pilots from small POCs to pilots to production and scaling. So that is a distinct change in the pattern that is happening. Second is the concerns around quality are rising. The concerns about quality and consistency go together. So if I'm deploying this in production, now I have to be accountable for the business outcomes consistently. I can't afford errors. Second is the concerns around costs are also becoming critical when you scale. And the dependency on big tech, right? So another thing is even very large companies. We work with, let's say, the top 2 insurance companies globally or top payment processors, the credit card processors. They have to see that if I have to process tens of millions of transactions a day and I'm dependent on an API call to something from one of the cloud providers, am I putting my neck in their hands, right? Financially, scaling, performance-wise. Then how do I manage that go-to-market? Because the best technology today is with them, with my independence, flexibility, with models that I can host. So a lot of thinking, that is the second pattern that is emerging. Third pattern that is emerging is there is a clear layers now between the core infrastructure, the AI infrastructure particularly on top of it, and then the data engineering layer and the applications that relevant to my business. I want to put my energy and time and effort, my teams, my budget on that top layer more. And if I can take this from somewhere else, I will take that. That is the other mindset that is emerging. So all of the governance, all of the security, all of the infrastructure, we will take from large cloud providers and open source ecosystem, and then I will focus energy on applications. So these are some patterns that clearly starting to.
Thank you. I'm sure a lot of us must be worried about the security, the trust which comes along with generative AI, right? We don't want our data to be exposed to the vendors outside, right? So what do you say about that?
There's the technology angle there, and there is also the legal or contractual angle that comes in. So from day one, companies like ours have focused only on enterprise grade service providers, where you have service agreements, where they will guarantee you that whatever data context or small context you are sending to an API call is not retained on their side, or it is not being used to train the model. When you use consumer technology, you don't have these guarantees today, right? And even I think perhaps with the paid version of some of these services, you have to read and see whether they give you. But enterprise side you have, and this started emerging in like around March, April last year. More until then, we were actually doing all of our work with open source tech hosted in the customer environment. So nothing is going out. But today we see that they are using hyperscaler or cloud provider models because they are governed by those service agreements. But that in addition to that, it still requires you to do a lot of data engineering and prepare your data for it to be given as context to this model. That is hosted typically in containers that run inside the customer's cloud. That is not being right now fully being managed in managed services in the cloud. And then there are systems of record that you access via API. Some of your data may be in a Salesforce implementation, some may be in Oracle Cloud implementation, human capital management data. So that is accessed on the fly, again retrieved and then given to the foundation model depending on the context. So with a pattern like this, CXOs are saying that I can, between the legal contracts and these technical design patterns, I know where my data resides at all times, where it's touching. It is also important that there are a lot of shadow IT kind of things that are happening, meaning you don't want to restrict use of this technology to an extent that your organization doesn't move forward. So you have to open up certain things. So in our company, for example, you can access the consumer side of ChatGPT, but it opens by default in a browser isolated environment. So you can't upload data or download data from it. So this security team is handling, making sure that nothing is leaking from the enterprise, but you can experiment with the technology. So that is the other posture that companies are taking. But you can only do this for the known technologies. Today, there was a person I met 2 days ago for a different organization. He was saying, yeah, we have blocked all these things, but I use this to write my summarization of certain things I do in my research. And that site is not even known to the IT team. So that shadow IT, much like what I was telling sir about, students will learn, water will find its way, right? So in that kind of environment, the companies that actually employ a zero trust posture, where I'm not blocking or enabling something specific sites only, but I'm generally seeing where my data is flowing and observing it, those companies are able to continue to move forward.
Any questions from anyone? I'm coming to Vaishali. I have a specific question for Vaishali. So Vaishali, your son is in 10th standard, right? So do you think what will be the impact on, him, a field, what he chooses today? Will it be there tomorrow? What kind of impact does this thought come across to you?
Yes, it does. And I think it is a thought which comes to the minds of most parents, not just the ones who are in the 10th or the 12th, but I think as parents, we no longer find ourselves, fully equipped to guide them as to what career they should take, especially if it is such a fast moving career. So I think where Dr. Kamath, who's also my professor, his concerns are also our concerns, whether they're doing the right thing, the content that they're exploring, whether that's the right thing. So that's actually, I think, a question to the panelists that I would have. As a parent, beyond the career, the major concern that I have is, will AI discourage my child to think, to explore, to innovate, to digest? Because AI is giving everything ready-made. And how do I guide my child to still use their mental faculties and drive in the fact that, AI is still not at a stage where yesterday I think somebody was saying we are not wise as yet. So how do you think we can do that?
Thank you, Vaishali. So just to give you this example, I told my 9-year-old to ask ChatGPT the questions to solve. And after asking the question, she also said, solve it for me. Yeah. So
Anybody else wants to take? This is a tough question, right? Yeah, I'll
Actually, we had discussion about this. Regarding whether it is good to use ChatGPT or no. If a few years before calculator came into existence, before that there was no calculator. Now, again, that time maybe we don't know that whether to use calculator because for performing so many operations, logarithmic and all. After few years down the line, now calculators we are allowing them in the examinations. Okay, they don't have to add two numbers, divide, find log, which we used to do before using logarithmic tables and all those things. What I feel personally is if it is used in a constructive way, okay, then it is beneficial for the students or kids. Now, how constructive way that each person should decide. I cannot tell this is the constructive way, whether you should rely totally on ChatGPT or no. And as a mentor, as a teacher, it is my responsibility also to teach my ward how constructive it is. And at the same time, parents also should educate their child. Means, so I cannot say this is the barrier, this only you should do, or this you should not do. But if it is used in a blended mode, then it is very good for kids as well as for the whole community.
I'll take a stab at it, but first I want to acknowledge that this is actually a very profound question, and this we confronted even when in our enthusiasm we started as a company doing this. We confronted that pretty late, that if you are giving tools to even engineers to build software using AI, will we lose the 5 years, 6 years down the line? Will people forget how to really program fundamentally well, or even understand what code AI is generated to be able to sometimes fix it? So it's a very legitimate problem. The only answer to that is being actually very vigilant consciously about how to bring your understanding, how to build your understanding still, and bring your creativity to, and treat this like a tool whose output you have to be constantly able to understand and monitor. If it's just like sometimes in human teams also, right? If I have a team and I don't understand what they're doing, they'll take me for a ride. I will not know what quality I'm getting and so forth. That applies here as well. And the other real part is, even writing or sketching or writing code, writing English or any language that any prose that you're writing, or poetry, or writing code. This is in many ways a very fundamental human expression, and it takes practice. So one real danger is there, that the future generations actually lose that practice, just as they are losing the practice of cursive writing even and so forth. So it's a real risk, and there is no one answer other than to constantly remind them and actually practice as well. And it's not just for kids, it's for your teams in your business, everywhere.
Thank you so much. We are running out of time, so I'll just quickly go to all of them once. Sujit, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when you think of any new technology, I mean, you have to look at how you can actually implement it for the good. Like if you're talking about soft skills, like even in my company, even if you have to type a simple mail, and if the soft skill is not there in my team, they will use ChatGPT, and it'll give you a beautiful outcome of what you need to actually send to the client. But that's fine, because it is just limited to an email. But when it comes to using coding skills, like if they are stuck at maybe finding one particular solution, and it generates and gives it to you, but there's no guarantee that it's a perfect code. It could have loopholes. So somewhere down the line, there's a human intervention that is required to at least validate what is being given to you. Otherwise, what will happen is, over a period of time, you will be so limited to what is generated is right. So that validation of the right and incorrect, that skill should not be lost in a human. Otherwise, everything will be taken over by whatever new technologies that, as we progress, as we move ahead in times, and technology is changing very fast. So we need to adapt, but at the same time, we need to understand. And I think you can't ignore technology. I mean, you can't shut the door on it. It's somehow going to make life easier. So we have to adapt to it, but at the same time, we need to understand and implement it.
Anything you want to add?
Again, I want to stress, if it is technology, any technology, if it is used in a constructive way, then it's good for the human beings. Now, again, what constructive way? Again, it's a vague topic. We have to find out depending upon the areas and where you want to work it. So I feel there should not be resistance for change. But yes, again, as Sir mentioned, we are also using ChatGPT for preparing reports for our website when any event occurs. But that's again an assistance. We are giving our reports so that it summarizes and gives a crisper report. Again, I don't want this same thing. Students should use it for their dissertation. So that is my message. They should know how to write their dissertation on their own. So this tool can be used as an assistance for them. Okay, not for finding the solutions to the problems which teachers gives.
I think I've pretty much said everything. I'm very optimistic about this tech. I think the way we work is changing, and there's a lot to get out of it. The tools are, despite all the excitement, the tools are in very early stage of maturity for really to be high productivity useful. But it has the potential to become way better.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, all of our esteemed guests, as well as my fellow people here. And this brings to the end of our session. Thank you once again. Take care.